Hello, everybody. Welcome to Roosters Restaurant on Olentangy River Road in beautiful Columbus, Ohio. I'm Jeremy Birmingham. That's Bobby Carpenter. That's Bill Landis. Austin Ward's on vacation. Justin Zwick's on vacation. Nicole Cox is on vacation. We had a slight technical snafu, which cost us the presence of Zach Bourne on this episode, which I personally apologize for. That's unfortunate. Bob, we're in the thick of the off season here, right? So today we're just going to do like a smorgasbord.
Oh,
okay.
Love that. Yeah.
Just a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Not dissimilar from what we have in front of us.
Yeah, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. We got the $3 appetizer this week. Onion petals, onion feathers.
Onion feathers.
I always say petals, but I guess it makes sense that they're
Rooster's
feathers.
They're petal-like.
I guess it makes sense that it's a feather because it's a bird. Because it's a rooster.
So they've got the delicious pluck you sauce or plucking sauce, and it's fantastic. They're just tasty. They're delicious. They're $3 all day long on a Threes Day for an appetizer Threes Day, and they're good and delicious.
I think that onions are terrible. That's
my
take. Anti-onion in a major way.
Hold on. First of all, onion. There's a lot of. You're gonna just lump all the onions together.
Here's the thing.
What do you mean, you people?
I mean,
you onions. There's a lot of different varieties of onions.
I like onion powder. I like onion salt. I like the flavor of onion. I don't like
it's a texture thing.
I can't eat it.
So, if it's a texture thing, is it the crunchiness of a raw onion, or is it
it's all the above?
Gooey, warm, tasty deliciousness of like some like grilled onions?
Before we talk actual sprats on this show, is there any food that you eat or that you eat that makes you like dry heave the minute that you start?
Dry heave?
Dry heave? Like I start to literally, my body revolts.
There are things that I won't eat because I'm worried about. Like I won't try cottage cheese because I'm a little worried about that. Cottage cheese, the texture, but I've had things with cottage cheese in them. And I just eating cottage cheese straight up. I've done that. I don't particularly enjoy it, but I do like cottage cheese and what it represents. Yeah. But I'm not sitting here going to tell you like I think it's gross. Like you're telling me it makes you convulse and almost
it is a physical revulsion of my body saying.
So you won't get a nice grilled onion on a burger?
My body says no, thank you, and forces it out.
Dude, I saute onions every day with my omelet. They're the best. Yeah. Get some peppers in there. Is it you anti-pepper or just onion?
Pepper's fine.
Is it more of a root thing? Are you anti-carrot?
I like carrots also.
What about a shallot? Will you do a shallot in a pinch? Yes, that's kind of like
It's not the same.
The shallot is kind of like the half brother of the.
It's not the same response from my body, but it is also like a mental thing where I'm like, I don't even want to approach it. I don't even want the onion's cousin to be involved because
onions are very potent. How about something that's been or with an onion that probably has absorbed some of that flavor?
No.
Is it
onion flavor's fine? I don't even mind onion flavor. But my mom used to always do this thing where she would say, "Well, you can't taste it. The onions." That is classic big family cooking because you can't make everybody happy. I'd say, Mom, if I can't taste it, why are you putting it in there? Why are you wasting my time and yours?
Why are you cutting your dicing these onions for something that have no impact?
Right. If they're not actively impacting the flavor, why are you making it?
So my brother-in-law always said that with the peas and like the beef stew and like vegetable soup. And my father-in-law's response is like, they're so small, you can't even taste them. That's like, so why are they in there? So one day he took a box of lemon heads and dumped them in there. And then her dad's like, this soup tastes terrible. He goes, I put the lemon heads in there. He goes, you said they were so small, you can hardly even taste them.
Lemon head soup sounds awesome.
That sounds good. Especially when it's like mixed with beef broth and some vegetables in there.
Beef broth and lemon heads. That's the best. Disgusting. Speaking of disgusting, Bill, some of the early All-American lists are coming out.
Yeah.
And there are two Ohio State players that we've seen on whose list was it? Phil Steele's?
This was Phil Steele's I was looking at.
First team All-American. Bob, can you guess who they are?
Starvin Marvin.
Uh-huh.
And JT?
No.
Eichenberg?
Close. Tommy Eichenberg. As first team All-Americans, he had JT Tuimoloau. Who else in the second team?
Emeka Ibuka was second team, and Donovan Jackson was second team, and then Trevion Henderson was third team. What did you think about? Did you see Phil's all meathead team?
Mm-mm.
Oh, you got to go through the magazine.
I haven't gotten it yet.
Oh,
so, yeah.
I got the all meathead list.
Love that.
All meathead squad.
Kate on that or Tommy?
I got Proctor on there.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, all right, it works.
All you need to do, Ryan Clark, who I talked to, when I was working up at ESPN, talked to Ryan. He goes, dude, I don't care anything about you, dude, but he remembered watching the Big Ten championship game in the last play against Wisconsin. Was it the quarterback?
Yeah.
He tried to go get the cheap touchdown at the end, and Josh Proctor ended his life.
Yeah,
I think he may have died. They panned away. I'm not sure he ever got up.
That was on the last play of the game, right? So the coaching staff and the players are all starting to fill onto the field.
This dude's just laying there.
And I'm trying to chase the coaches out there with the camera. And then you just see Ryan Day running and goes, ooh, and then has to go back out to midfield. And like nobody goes to check on the guy. Like, okay, sorry, bud. That was unfortunate.
Yeah, you heard that one in the closed off press box.
Oh my God, the crack of it. And it was such a throwaway because everyone's like, oh, the game's over this net. And no, I mean, that kid, I thought he broke his collarbone. Yeah. Like, Brock smoked him. So that's what Ryan Clark's, I love that dude. And I'm like, you know what? He'll hit you. Like, don't ever be afraid of the courage of Josh Proctor. So we had Jacob Hester and I put that together. And so I'm like, I got to get my dude Proc on the all meathead squad.
So you have a handful of Buckeyes, a plethora.
Yeah.
Getting some early season, off season recognition. Obviously, there's no argument with Marvin and Tommy.
No.
Tommy should have been first team All-American last year.
I don't know how that.
I will challenge anyone who says that he was not the best linebacker in the country to actually watch the film when it mattered. I understand Jack Campbell's a good player and all that, and I can whatever.
Yeah,
I've made peace with it. Who isn't on that list, Bob?
Who I think will be really good.
That should be or will be by the time we're having this conversation again in like November.
I think I would say that there should be someone from the secondary there. No, I'm not sure. Because a lot of it's going to come down to how effective they are playing. I mean, they've got some good corners. I mean, I really like Hancock. I think he could be on there. I know Denzel had a little bit up and down, was injured last year. I mean, when you start talking about production, like I think Lathan's going to be very productive this year. And that's usually to be an All-American on the defensive side. You have to have a lot of big stats. Like just being a good player is tough. And so you have to have interceptions, pick six, stuff like that. I feel like Lathan can have that type of year. He's a smart dude, second year in the system. You saw him play pretty well last year as his role was beginning to grow. So I think that he could definitely be on there.
He was getting flowers last season as on some awards list that he got added to late.
He was
a
award semifinalist, yeah.
And for a guy who wasn't even the starter, like to open the season.
Yeah. And then it kind of petered off at the end.
Well, everyone in the secondary decided to peter off in the last couple of games of the year for some reason.
That is true. I think, there's candidates in the secondary. I think, like, Michael Hall.
Yeah. Yes.
It depends on how many snaps, I guess, he played. I can't remember.
If he can get 8 snaps, he can get 3 sacks.
8 snaps a game, 3 sacks a game. If he's going to play as much as I think we all believe he's going to play this year, I think he's a guy that can flirt with double-digit sacks, maybe 20 or so TFLs, if not more than that. I think he's that disruptive of a player. And, like, in the spring, they couldn't block him. And I know part of that is they're working some new guys through in the offensive line. But the interior of the offensive line has 2 pretty good guards. And, like, I fully believe.
One of them was on the All-American list. So.
I fully believe in Donovan Jackson and Matthew Jones. And even they have a hard time sometimes with blocking Mike Hall. So I think he is perhaps on the verge of, like, really breaking through in a major way on the national scene.
Have you seen him lately? He looks like a running back almost.
He's like 280. I almost want him to gain a little. I know you want to be explosive, but I worry just for the longevity of the season. It's so long. You get beat up, and that's what happened to him last year. Yeah. He was fighting some stuff. I just want to make sure he's healthy. If he's healthy, he'll be on there because he will have a lot of impact plays.
Yeah,
and especially coming from that interior spot, it's always the defensive ends people look at for sacks. I mean, if you're a double-digit sack guy inside, that's saying something. So I would imagine that he could be on there. Another guy, I think Fryer could potentially do that. I liked what he did. If we believe, and this is always it's tough when you're going against your own guys, but if you believe that Ohio State has recruited the defensive end position pretty well, and I think JT and Jack are going to have good years. I think what's his name?
Kenyatta.
Kenyatta Jackson started looking really good. He did a pretty good job blocking those guys in one-on-ones.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think that he should have a pretty good year. I mean, is it going to be, Paris Johnson type year? Probably not to that degree, but I think that he'll have a good season where he could be getting All-American honors. And you start looking around, it's like, okay, you're protecting your quarterback, your offense is good, and this guy should maybe get some recognition.
I think it's difficult to predict 5 offensive players on a first, second, third All-American team and to do that, assuming that only one of them is an offensive lineman, because the offensive line has to be pretty good for the other guys to be good. So, I mean, Josh Fryer is certainly there. I think Matthew Jones, if he's healthy, is a player that could work himself into that mix, and whether, second team award or something like that. But ultimately, the Ohio State offense is going to go as far as the offensive line allows them to. So I think that you have to have another offensive player there. I also think that someone like Steele Chambers, who the defense allows him to get stats, as you said. Like, he's more likely to have interceptions or fumbles than Tommy and do things like that. But, I know a lot of people are clamoring for C.J. Hicks to play or anyone else other than him. But
I don't know. Steele played well last year.
He was really good last year.
Like, really well.
He had an interception in the national championship in the semifinal. Like,
he was
played
a
well.
madman in the second half. He was awesome. Yeah.
That's why I wanted to show me the film where you don't think that he was productive as a player. Did he have some bad plays? Sure, everybody did. But I didn't see anything where I'm like, this guy, there's someone else that I think is better. Now, will C.J. Hicks play? I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope they get him rolling in and have some roles and stuff for him. So that comes down to just the amount of snaps. And I hope that they start getting some of these young guys on the field too when you're up big, just to develop them as well. So, how do your numbers look when you're maybe not playing more than 60% of a lot of games?
How long, when you got to Ohio State, obviously you're a freshman in 2002, you win a national championship as a freshman. You don't play a whole lot that year because you shouldn't have to. At what point?
For playing a lot of freshmen, it's not a good thing.
At what point in your second season did you start to get antsy, where you're like, okay, I know I'm ready. I know I can help this team. And is there a tipping point where it goes from being, I'm waiting my turn, I'm being patient, I'm being a good teammate, to, okay, what am I going to play or not?
Yeah, they did a good job of rolling guys.
Yeah.
And so, like, even my second year, I wanted to be the starter like day one. We had Robert Reynolds coming back, AJ starting. We're still trying to figure out the Mike position. They had Freddie Puggett, Mike DeAndre, a couple guys, kind of rolling through. And I was rolling with Robert a lot, and I was probably playing, 35, 40% of the snaps on defense. And then, some injuries and things usually tend to work themselves out. And it was like, all right, well, I started the game. Robert got suspended after he choked Sorgi.
Yep.
And
the incident.
The incident
with Jim Sorgi.
I was on the field for that too. It was and so I'm trying to think, maybe they were already starting to move him to Mike before that. But then I started that game against Iowa the next week and played probably my worst game I've ever played at Ohio State. Just
the first game you started. Yeah,
I mean, it's just the psychological pressure of like trying it so hard to want to play and make plays and just not, And I had played a lot before that, but it was like, okay, you're starting
against a team that is like run heavy.
And they're run heavy, and it matched up. But they ended up moving Robert to middle linebacker, and I ended up playing a lot and, had a lot of success, my sophomore year.
I just think the conversation around when should 5-stars play,
it's when you're ready to play.
Get them
on the field.
It's become one of the more inane conversations we have, because there is not a copy and paste version of this. Like, everyone is different.
Yeah, everyone's different, and it's also kind of a cyclical deal too. Like, everyone was like comparing the amount of snaps for freshmen at like Alabama and Georgia compared to Ohio State last year. Going back the year before that, like, Ohio State played a ton of freshmen, and the reason the freshmen didn't play last year because all those freshmen that played the year before came back and started. So
like sophomores.
Yeah, sophomores. So like that happens too, and I think like the position matters. Like I don't know. I think linebacker can be tough to play unless you're just gonna put a guy on the ball and say go get the quarterback. I think you can do that.
If you're
going to make them do everything at the position, Bob can speak to it certainly more than I can.
But
I think it's tough,
especially in this defense.
Yeah,
you do a lot. I think you can build packages for guys. Like, okay, let's do this when he's in. We run these things, and you give them a series here. And that's what it kind of was. And for me, Robert used to get tired a lot, but then they're like, hey, take this, take the third series. Take this, come in for him. And if you're playing well, they leave you out there and. The more you can handle, the more you play, and you start trying to figure out who are our best players, what do they do, and let's start molding and doing things and getting them all on the field. Because I've always been a big believer, if you have a guy who's good at one thing, get him on there to do the one thing. He's good at two, and we can grow what they do. But my answer was, when should guys play? It's like when they're ready to play. And I don't care if you have – I probably averaged, 10 plays a game when I was a freshman.
Yeah, that's the catch-22, though, because how do you guys get ready to play without playing?
You got to get them on. You got to have some faith. You got to have a little trust. We played Texas Tech, our opening first game for the year. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe I'll get in the second half. They were pretty good, and you had no idea how the game would go, and no one knew that Maurice was going to run for like 200 yards in the first half. And so I'm not even thinking about going in on anything but special teams in the first half. Yeah. And then this is no joke. The last series, it's 2-minute, which I was always playing Sam, but then I was our nickel Mike, and they take out Wilhelm and C. Grant, and they put AJ and I in there. And like this wasn't everyone else. Like it was still Will Smith. It was still all these dudes, and they're giving me calls. And I'm like, oh my god! And like, then Will's like, what's the call? What's the call? And I'm like, we're huddling. I'm like trying to look. I mean, it's like I didn't plan on going in right now. I thought we were going to talk about this at halftime. You put me in that last stinking drive, and AJ, I'm like, hey, and he's like, just chill, dude. Like fed me first, and then all right. But when you have guys that are All-American players that are really good, like, hey, what is it? Come on, man! Like, and you're frozen because you weren't ready to go. And like I ended up playing all right. Second half played and it was fine. But that first moment you go in, it's a little big. And so you get those small moments, you get them out of the way. And then if something happens where a guy gets hurt and you have to play the other guy, he's already done it. He feels good about it and the guys trust him.
I think the argument just falls flat in some ways even for last year because we watched as Ohio State put Sonny Styles, a guy without a true position, who should have been playing his third week of
17.
Should have been playing his third week of his senior season as the primary guy against Wisconsin. So go chase that guy around. I was going to actually say, like, I don't think you should put CJ out there without Tommy next to him.
No, because that's the thing. You don't. That's what my dad, my freshman year, I was arguing. Like, I need to get on. He goes, they ain't putting you and AJ on the field together. He's like, they will have a revolt. You're undefeated. He's like, there's seniors on there, and they're going to be like, wait, you're taking both these dudes off, putting 2 freshmen on here. If one of you blows a coverage or misses a tackle and you lose a game, the coach, they will be on the coaches.
One of my favorite hits of all time is that Ohio State Washington State game that year with Darion Scott blasting Jason Gesser. One of my favorite hits. I don't know why. There's always those hits like the Tommy or the Andy Katzenmoyer against Corby Jones from Missouri.
Oh yeah,
that was you're gonna want to look that one up.
Yeah,
flat.
Went
horizontal. But when you look at a guy like C.J. Hicks, who we talk about a lot, we talk about Sonny Styles a lot, like. If there's one complaint I had last year, it's that they didn't do that. Okay, 4th series you're in, and you just figure it out and then go from there. But it seemed like that was happening at some positions last year. We're not going to talk about too much. Austin's not here, so we're going to take a reprieve from it. It did seem to happen in one position group where it was like you're going to be in, but the other positions weren't. And I wonder if that – obviously we know why it happened that way in the secondary. They were so injury depleted that you couldn't put other guys out there. But at linebacker – like you had the 2 guys who were playing at clearly the highest level on the defense and a new coach who had no idea about really anyone else, who was also the defensive coordinator. Like, I don't think it's a fair thing to look at Knowles and say, well, you should have been playing this guy who you have no trust in.
Tommy and Steele were playing great. Right. Like, that's the thing. Like, they had finally settled in, and it was a new scheme, new defense, a lot of things. And, it's tough pulling, sometimes guys out that make a lot of calls because it's not just the playing. Like, you wouldn't want to have CJ out there without Tommy beside him. And because you want to make sure you have other guys that, hey, if he needs a little help, I can be there for him to make sure that everything is structurally set up the right way. And so I think that there was some room to play those guys, especially later in games, and get them in.
That's the biggest thing for me. Like, I don't remember, was CJ hurt the Toledo week? They won that game like 1,000,000-0. He didn't play a single snap of linebacker in that game. Didn't play against Arkansas State. Didn't play against Indiana. Didn't play against Rutgers. Like,
right, there's clearly a missed opportunity.
It's not even rotation.
Misconnections.
And I do wonder how much that is just because Knowles in his first year with Ohio State didn't really know what he had and was too preoccupied probably in. You had Coy McFarland as the assistant linebackers coach, and he's the one making those calls.
Part of me wonders too, like, so like Coy was a Jim Knowles guy, right? He's just gonna probably defer to what Jim says. Like, now that James is in there, James is gonna be like, hey, like, I know you're not thinking of this, but like, put Gabe Powers in the game. Well, he needs to play.
Well, I think you might have James, like, there might be a little more autonomy to be able to just, I'm going to handle the rotations. And when you're calling a defense, that's the last thing that you're thinking about is who's doing what and this, that. Let James get a little, let's rotate these guys through. You handle it. It's your room. You figure out what that rotation will look like.
We knew with Coy McFarland that he was the de facto linebacker coach a year ago. But I don't think he had the cachet in the building to be able to make those calls on his own.
Putting a freshman in? Like, what are we doing?
James Laurinaitis, I believe, who is the de facto linebackers coach, I think he will have the cachet to do that. Plus, he's not going to have to worry about it because these guys are now in their second year in the program, and it's not quite as ballsy to do it. You know, the only linebacker they brought in the class of 2023 is Arvell Reese, and you're not really expecting to have to put him in. Although, have you seen him lately? That kid is a freak.
Yeah, he's got it all physically, but there's going to be a developmental curve with him, and so you're not expecting him to play. Whereas Siege like made some plays, but then it all comes down with young guys is consistency. Like those guys can make plays, but it's not how good the best play is. It's like how bad is your worst play. And it's okay. Against Toledo in the second half, like, all right, you give up something because you were chasing something you shouldn't have been, and all of a sudden they score a touchdown. All right, so you give up one score, which you never want to do, but you want to have those growing moments so that if, you know what, Steele rolls his ankle or has his helmet that's got to get fixed, and it's the second half, you know, against Wisconsin or Penn State or whatever it is, like you can put him in. Like we've played, you have experience, you're now ready to go.
Yeah, or if on a late October night in Madison, Wisconsin, Steele Chambers decides to choke Nick Evers and CJ.
I don't know if Steele's got that in him.
CJ Hicks has to come in the game. It does bring me to switching gears here. Another night game on the schedule, sort of announced, is the Wisconsin game will be at night. Luke Fickell against Ryan Day in Madhouse. Is that what they call it?
Bucky versus Brutus.
The Madhouse? Yeah. No, I don't. I think the Madhouse on Madison is where the Chicago Blackhawks play, but I don't think they call it the stadium in Madison.
It's Camp Randall, buddy.
But I want to call it the.
Madhouse. Camp Randall sounds like a nickname.
Yeah, it does.
It does.
It was like where the president
Camp Randall,
this time.
I think, pitched for the Pittsburgh Grays in 1920.
He had a great season in 21. What was your least favorite stadium to play in the Big Ten?
Hardest or least favorite?
Who did you hate? Which fans did you hate the most?
Oh, Wisconsin, dude. Them and Penn State.
That's what I thought you'd say was Wisconsin.
Penn State, the second time, I mean, it was a close second. They tightened it up there. We came in 05. But, dude, Wisconsin, we went there back-to-back, 02 and 03. Yeah. And that's the first time I had people throwing.
Ohio State has to go there back-to-back now with the scheduling. They go there this year and next. My brother, who was at that game in 2003 in Madison, said it was the only time he's been on the road as an Ohio State fan where he felt physically unsafe. In
Wisconsin.
Yeah, and Wisconsin won that game. So
so when Ohio State opened the season at Minnesota 2 years ago, my wife came with me. She came out. We had some.
You guys went to Wisconsin after, right?
Yeah, we went to the Wisconsin Penn State game. We drove back, went to the Wisconsin Penn State game, and I wore all black to be neutral, but she was wearing Penn State stuff. She got a lot of crap, and that stadium too. Like I have never been in a more cramped stadium. Than that.
Cramp Randall.
Yeah, honestly, it was like I couldn't sit down on my seat. Like, I'm a larger guy, obviously, but like I couldn't sit on my seat because they fit probably 6 more people than they should in one row of seats. So like, if you're a visiting fan in those confines, I can see how.
Yeah, he said it was the only time he's ever been felt physically unsafe.
Oh yeah, we were in the tunnel in that 03 game. Yeah. Said you were there.
My brother went.
It started out.
Warm-ups?
Well, warm-ups, it was about, 60 and pretty nice. Yeah. We came back out, wind, 20-mile-an-hour, sheets of rain. It was awful. It totally mind adjustment for what that game was going to be like. But yeah, that's the spot, man. That night game up there at Camp Randall, that'll be a hornet's nest.
How many night games do you think Ohio State will play this year? We talked about it a little bit last week, off camera, but
I bet
that's 3 now we know of, right?
I'm guessing probably. I think Ryan will probably try to cap it at 4. I mean, I don't want to take any more road night games.
I'm willing to venture they'll play a night game at Rutgers.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you got to put some on BTN.
BTN, yeah.
And that's early October. It's always fine. That was not announced. So you got Notre Dame, Michigan State, Wisconsin. Penn State will probably be a new game on Fox. So this schedule, like as a player, I was talking last week at camp to a couple of the freshmen and one of the quarterbacks who hasn't really traveled much, and they were debating whether or not they liked home games at night or road games at night. And one of the guys, I love road games at night. Like you've never played in one. You've never been to one. How do you know?
You're not going to pick.
Especially if you're playing quarterback.
You're going to get home at 5 in.
It's a long. That's the one thing. It's a long day getting back. And I know the coaches don't like it because you get so far behind. We played so many in Dallas, and our night games, our travel coming back was far. Now at least it's pretty close. Yeah. But they fly out of Rickenbacker. You want to know the longest drive you can have in Columbus? It's at 4:30 in the morning from Rickenbacker to campus on one of the. I think they now take nicer buses. We would take the OSU cabs buses. Oh, really? I think they drove 45 miles an hour. I'm sitting there looking. I'm like, dude, I might be able to run faster than this. We're on 315. There's not a car in sight. not a sober person in sight. It's like 3:30, and we're just like driving 45 miles an hour. It was awful.
Rickenbacker is a fun word. You know what else is fun? Onion
Feathers.
Feathers.
Trying to
Onion feathers. $3 on Tuesdays. Tuesday this week at Roosters. All Roosters
Appetizer
locations
Tuesday
around Ohio. We're going to take a quick break, get back, talk a little bit of recruiting stuff after the biggest weekend with Aaron Nolan out at the Elite 11. Ohio State hosting 10 official visitors. We'll cram a little stuff into this episode of the live show with Bobby Carpenter, Bill Landis. I'm Jeremy Birmingham. We'll be right back.
Roosters has been so fortunate. We just want to be able to give some of that back to the community.
They donate to organizations that are near and dear to their heart, and we're so fortunate to have been with Roosters now for a long time.
They always go above and beyond to help support our foundation to further help veterans.
It's just a wonderful feeling to know that Roosters supports the Buckeye Cruise for Cancer.
All the folks at Roosters are just genuinely kind folks, and they want to make a difference.
Thank you, Roosters Foundation.
Thank you, Roosters.
Thank you, Roosters.
Thank you, Roosters Foundation.
We're back. Bob has refreshed. He hydrated. Is that your favorite sign that was ever in the Woody, the hydration sign? The bad guy sign?
The bad dudes, when you looked at it and they had the different levels
You're a bad guy.
The different levels of urine color.
Yeah.
And then they had like scumbag on the right because you refused to drink water. You've been drinking too much
It
alcohol.
just said, you're a bad guy.
Yeah, you're a bad guy.
My favorite deal was, before we had our drug tests, is I would always go try to find some asparagus the night before. Make sure you had a nice frothy bomb. Just drop it in there. Sykes used to get mad when they would serve it because he used to have to test it.
Oh, no.
Like, I have a master's degree. I'm over here testing urine color on a stick. Wearing a lab coat. It's good. Yeah, the bad guy.
Do you think that they show when they have you've spent time inside of the Woody Hayes Athletic Center when they're hosting recruits?
Yeah.
Do they show kids the signage and be like, this one means you better drink a lot of water or else you're going to be on our bad guy list?
Bad guy. Well, it's scumbag list, man. You don't care. Make sure you do it. Those are in there. I mean, I think people probably talk about them and ask, like, hey, we're going to take care of your kid because when you're hydrated, you're going to be fine. Yeah. You never get injured, never get concussions.
No one's ever been hurt when they're hydrated, so that's true.
Proper hydration is key, and so making sure you're doing it. That's why, hey, said no drink, no tape. They've got like stuff up all around where you've got always just drinking water. So it's a good deal for all that. I wanted to bring this up. I got a package the other day, and it didn't say who it was from. There's no return address on it. I couldn't remember what. I thought it was maybe someone sending something to sign. It was in like the bigger.
You opened it? Yeah. I wouldn't open it.
Why?
It's an unlabeled package.
It was addressed
sent
to me.
To your home. Yeah, great.
What do you think? It's anthrax? Like
Why not?
Unabomber? Like, come on. I get a lot
He's
of
dead now.
I still get some.
Is he?
Because it is. But it's sit there and I thought it was maybe something to sign, and send back. Like, people occasionally send things. I don't know how they got my home address, but the people we've moved, and the great post office folks, they just continue to bring it. I mean, it's been 4 years since we've moved, and they just bring it over. But I opened this up, and I thought it was going to be an 8x10, and I had heard that he was doing this because Hartsock got his back. But we'd have to do goal sheets every year with Tress. All 4 of my goal sheets, all of his meeting notes around but the goal sheets. So basically, it's like your psychiatrist notes, like as you from the sessions. There was like some other random things that I had to fill out with him, and we had a lot of. I was telling James, we had a lot of private meetings, and then Laurinaitis was like, "Yeah, he got me mine back, a couple weeks ago too." And it's just unbelievable to look through all this stuff, and off the show.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you're not reading these on the show is actually a miss.
Well, there was.
Because I know Tressel only dropped one F-bomb in the entire time, so the writing had to have been legible and very proper.
Goals had to be specific and measurable. There was all this criteria.
Specific, measurable.
There were 6 categories. Six categories of it. Then we had short-term goals, 3 of each, how we were going to achieve each one of those, long-term dream/goals, and how we would achieve each one of those. I mean, it would take 45 minutes to an hour to fill these things out. And so he'd cap them all, he photocopied them, and sent them back. And it was like, it's interesting now, 20 years later, like my O2 goal, win a national championship, which we did that year, and, win the Big Ten, beat Michigan or whatever. I did all those. So like the next year I see our team goals, it was win 4 Big Ten championships because we'd already won 1. I'm like, well, we see if we win them all and beat Michigan. So there's something else in there. But we always had just like what your life goals of playing in the NFL, get drafted. I wanted to get my master's degree. All this stuff, these different things that I'd had in there that I've been able to achieve in life. I don't know if I probably would have done it, and I didn't even know what these goals were, but just the writing it down and talking it through with him, like he is one of the greatest dudes. I told James that because we're talking about this lifting today, and he was meeting with his players, and I'm like, could you imagine doing this for 40 years and you're just meeting with the linebackers, meeting with everybody?
I was going to say, Tress did it with every player?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Like, and so I'm saying he kept all this. And
Do you think he just sends it out on the 20 years for everyone, or what?
No, I think he retired and they moved out.
Just moving all this.
They
paperwork.
moved from Florida. They moved down to Florida.
In
And I
his
think
garage next to his Corvette.
Yeah, I was like, hey, I don't think Tress has a Corvette.
It's
something much more sensible.
Yeah,
those sensitive documents are just all.
Oh, I got. I'm picking it up. I'm picking up what you're putting down now. But he, I think his wife Ellen was like, "Dude, we're moving. We don't need all this. Get it back to the guys." And so I think he's sent out the last.
He doesn't
all
want
of
you
his
to have
players.
his address though. He doesn't put that return address on.
Well,
he's like,
because I don't know if he had it yet.
Dear Bobby, I'm sending you this, but don't ever find me.
Well, he had a note that he wrote with it, and it had some would be like stationery is called, and it had an address, but it was scratched out because it was his old one. Because I don't know if he has his new place yet in Florida or what, but he's doing that for everybody. So I was kind of mad when Hartsock got his. I go, I better get mine back. I want to see what kind of nonsense I wrote on there.
I mean, compare. You went into your recruiting visits with Tress, and did you ever get the sense like this is how this guy's going to be, and then he actually was, or was it like even more over the top with his diligence and his prep? Because Jim Tressel is a remarkable person.
He is,
and I don't know that should be the expectation for every recruit who's talking to a coach, but when you see something like that, and you obviously spend a lot of time talking with Ryan Day, do you ever be like, by the way, have you thought about this? Like, are you saying, by the way, Jim Tressel did this, and it worked out pretty well for us?
Everybody's different. They can only kind of be themselves. I said this, Ryan reminds me, he does have like some attributes of Tress, like of how he operates, some of the things he does, how he looks at things. He's just, everyone's their own person. I mean, Tress was so concerned about life, developing the person. And
the Blocko of life.
Yeah, what that would do, not only and that's why I still think there is in college football, there is an element of human development that needs to happen. It's not just developing players. Like, you have to develop these guys as people. Yeah. They will become better players because of that. And it's, watching them grow into young men is unbelievable. He had a note in there that my dad wrote him. It was Valentine's. It was dated Valentine's Day 2006. So after my senior season, and it was a thank you note from my dad to Tress and my dad and mom about, thank you for coaching Bobby. We appreciate that. I know he can be a difficult character at times, and everything you did in your development, and you have a lot of things to worry about. We have our one, and you did a great job of taking care of him, and just very appreciative. And I'm like, Tress, have this in there, and that stuff. And so I was not an easy guy to coach, and I appreciate all those things. And so I look at Ryan, I've watched Urban, like just watching all these different coaches and how they operate. You got to be true to yourself. And I think Ryan he finally began to show a little bit more of that personality against Georgia.
Yeah.
But he does meet and talk with his guys, and he has really good relationships with players. Ryan is a very good people person, more so than probably Urban was, and just a very different type of human being.
The guys who come to town, how much they're not spending 48 hours with Ryan Day, right? No. And they shouldn't.
I've been with Tress for 20 half hour. I don't know. Like at the end, it's like, hey, here's the visit. Your time with Tress at 9:30. You're out at 10 or 9:45 with your parents, and we're meeting with someone else.
Yeah, I think recruiting now is so interesting because they spend the crux of their time with the position coach, right?
Yeah.
So, and then some of the time with the other players that are there on the visit, some of the time with the parents, some time with the academic advisors, and then it's like
sometimes a mandrake.
And then Sunday morning, they're like, "Now go talk to the head ball."
Yeah, that's how it is.
and then you have to be like ready to walk into the office to talk to the guy that you haven't really talked to, and you don't really know that well, and be like, and that guy's gonna be like, "So are you in?" And I think that's got to be kind of weird, right? Like, isn't there a sense of like I should be building a relationship with this guy too?
Yeah, but you don't talk to your head coach. I mean, I talked to Tress more when I was done playing.
Yeah.
And then your senior, as you grow through, once you become more of a leadership, and Ryan's got the leadership council and all that stuff, those are the guys. That's you sit down and start having those conversations like that. And so, yeah, as a recruit, I'll never forget at the end of my visit, I sat in there and I was kind of embarrassed. My mom and dad are there with me. And she asked Trish, she's like, why do you want my son to come and play for you? And I'm like,
damn, Mom.
what are you doing? Because like, do you have any questions? What questions do you have for him?
Have you ever met him? Are you sure you want him?
Well, it wasn't like that. She's like, why do you want him? She's like, well, you're an offensive coach. I trust, Coach D'Antonio and Coach Snyder. We've reviewed his film. He's like, good grades, all this stuff. She's like, but why do you want him? Yeah. And he's like, well, I trust my assistants. Like, I can't watch. I don't make a decision on every scholarship player that we're going to offer. Yeah. It's not how it's going to go.
It's just, I mean, Ryan is as involved in recruiting as any head coach in the country. Yeah. So to be clear, like, I'm not saying he's not formulating relationships or cultivating relationships throughout the time, but it's just a weird thing. Think about 10 official visitors, kids from, they had 8 defensive players, 1 from California, 3 from Texas, 2 from Georgia, like nobody from the Midwest at all. And so it's trying to cram all these personalities and people into a weekend and see if there's a cohesiveness that comes from being around other like-minded people, right? So when you're on a trip like this for a guy like Edric Houston, 5-star defensive lineman from Buford, Georgia, spends all his time with Larry Johnson, but the relationship is having to be built with the entire program. Yeah. And is there a person or department or piece of this puzzle that you think is missed?
Like at Ohio State?
Yeah, like that people on the outside looking in are not realizing all the things that are happening.
Oh gosh, now I mean, we start talking about like one of the things that they've done a better job now is like you're selling, Ohio, not selling, but you're talking about Ohio State, the school, obviously what it can provide, and then you start talking about the alumni base and like the vast reach that has and the volume of people that are involved in that. And then the pivot from that is how that can impact your life and what that can do. And, just regardless of where you want to live when you're done playing, leveraging the relationships in the city of Columbus. Now these guys have access to capital through NIL, getting them involved with the right people so they can start investing and getting involved in things early on in life and being able to have all that stuff like that. Those are the things now that Ryan understands and does a great job with. And that's why our recruiting has gone so well. Because number one, you're going to attract good people with that because those are things that should matter in life. And it matters if the parents, like when they look at this and they see like this is more than just make my kid a good football player. I want to make them into an unbelievable, they're going to have an unbelievable opportunity to be a great man. And that's what they're going to focus on. And so you do that, you get higher quality people. Like you said, they want to be around like-minded people. I don't want my kid to go to school with some scumbags and they're recruiting guys like this and doing whatever.
Some guy was really low on the P chart.
Yeah, I mean, he's a bad guy. He comes in with brown urine. He doesn't drink any water.
Is there tar in there?
I mean, well, maybe he's renal failure.
The recruits are spending time learning about NIL. They're doing Tyvis Powell helping out.
Oh yeah.
You've been over there to talk to families about the business school and that kind of stuff. When George is ready to get offered his college scholarships, right? I mean, he's still got a couple months till he's ready for that.
A few months, at least.
But as a parent, you start to see things from a totally different perspective.
Oh yeah.
You have almost to ignore football. You almost have to ignore it if you're a good parent.
It just feels like that part will take care of itself.
Yeah.
If everything else is right.
As long as it's a good program. If everything else is right. Like you want to make sure you have a good relationship with your position coach and make sure they're not a boob and some idiot because there are bad coaches out there. But my dad, number one question he asked me, would you want to go here if you didn't play football?
Yeah.
It was a pretty good question.
That has to be the final question, I think, in every recruiting decision. And I remember specifically with Raekwon McMillan's recruitment. I know he was down to Ohio State and Alabama and back and forth. And I got to know him pretty well in his recruitment. That was one of the questions that, he asked. He's like, where would I want to be? And then I'm like, well, I don't know. And then the next day he picked Ohio State because he just felt like the situation was better. But coming from a place like Georgia, you have so many guys down there that are just awesome players. KJ Bolden, 5-star defensive back who was up this weekend. Edric Houston, Air Nolan, three Georgia guys. How hard is it to just come up to the idea of leaving home and saying, I'm going to go to Columbus, Ohio, and start my new life?
I don't know. I went 40 minutes. So
you had to do it in a busted-ass truck.
I did. It was far enough for me that I could go back when I wanted, but it was close enough too. I mean, like it gave you the separation. I tell those guys, like I can't relate to what it would be like to go to school 1,000 miles away from where you're from, or 500 miles, or whatever it might be. There's a lot of guys that I played with who loved it. They came here and they came from other places. Like, Anthony Schlegel came from Dallas. He was at Air Force. Like we had Nate Sally in our class, came from Lauderdale. Like guys who just felt like home. I'm like, you come here, and you will get a sense of feeling like these are the people that I want to be around, and you will be embraced. You learn about the traditions and everything that goes into it. Columbus is a nice place to live, man. It's a very livable city. It's visitable. Like people enjoy coming here.
It's so different now, even from when you were arriving, because now they never leave the Woody.
Well, yeah, and the Woody's awesome.
They're there all the time.
It's people are like, well, and they're gonna probably renovate, probably do a whole new building at some point here in the near future. But like you go over there, they have everything you need. They have one of the other things. Like they have an elite training program, like not just weight training, but like the training room. Sean Barnhouse does a great job, and Adam Stewart, like he's the best PT in the country, and like their rehab and how they handle and attack things with guys like Tyler, the whole crew they've got over there, it's really good.
Bill, Aaron Nolan, who I mentioned, was at Ohio State on Saturday for his official visit, probably just wrapping up actually right about now, his 48-hour window. Was in the Elite 11 out in California 3 days prior. Finished top 5 according to pretty much everyone out there. When you watch quarterbacks, and I know you're more offensive line minded than maybe quarterback minded, is it just weird how they look when left-handers throw?
Yeah, man. It's like
it never looks pretty.
It looks wrong. Which is like you must with Aaron Nolan, like you don't pay attention to anything until the ball is actually out of his hand, and then like, oh yeah, that looks like it normally looks. But the whole mechanics of the delivery up until that point just look like it looks like someone inverted the photo frame.
It's so weird. I would just like to see it reversed.
Yeah,
they can do that now.
Yeah, then I'd be like more capable of saying, okay, that looks all right.
But it didn't seem to hinder his evaluations out there.
Yeah.
It seemed to be. I do think I don't know that I sense this a lot from Ohio State fans. I think everyone knows that Aaron Nolan is a really good quarterback, but I do think maybe nationally, because Ohio State lost Dylan Raiola and then had to pivot to Aaron Nolan, there's a notion out there that Aaron Nolan is less than or maybe not quite the caliber of quarterback that Ohio State is used to taking. I think he definitely is. Like if you watch his high school tape, you watch him perform at the stage like that. All the games he's won down there in Georgia, all the games he started, like he's incredibly experienced.
Yeah, he's 29-1 as a starter in 2 years in Georgia in 6A. That's pretty remarkable.
He's a really, really good player, and I thought that the Elite 11, like I don't know what it is. I think a lot of it is political, but you want to see him go down there and prove himself, and I thought he did.
Yeah, that was really the bottom line. All the reports were he opened eyes. He was, consistent. He was putting the ball where it needs to be. And the Elite 11, for all of the goop around it, and it is a lot of political stuff, a lot of the final decisions are made on high school, on your game tapes, on completely arbitrary decisions that are made by the people who are voting. Like it's not about how do you do those 3 days. But one thing I know from being out there in the past, they throw the ball a ton in those 3 days. Those arms are falling off by the time that these camps are over. So I think it's interesting for Air because he's not like as put together physically as some of the other guys like Dylan Raiola, who are a little bit more, sturdy. And so I think it's interesting that he was.
Are they getting sturdy out there?
Sturdy.
I don't know what that means. Did I miss it? Misreference?
Ask the girls; they'll tell you.
Okay, but he definitely stayed like on track and on task for 3 days, which was one of my thoughts going into it. Was like, how does he compare to these other guys who are maybe physically? I mean, he's 6'3" and about 180 pounds, so he's not like a small guy or anything. But
no, that's not. We got to get some beef on him.
He needs to get a little stronger, and so some of the other guys are ahead of him in that regard. But just as a pure passer, I think that there's maybe none better in this class.
It reminds me of C.J. Stroud the way he throws the ball, a left-handed C.J. Stroud the way he throws the ball. And I think like when you watch some of the stuff coming out of that over the weekend, like they do all these different events and different outlets where they have their own rankings. Like guys move up and down the board, and Air was like pretty consistently number 5. Like every time they put up those graphics, like top 3, 4, 5. I don't know if he was ever number 1.
Yeah. Rivals had a number 1 after first day.
Okay.
And then I think he was number 2 after second day, and then finished 3rd or something on the Rivals list. As you said, like On 3 had him 5th. The Elite 11 final rankings had him 3rd, right?
3rd.
So that's pretty good. If you're Ohio State, you want a top 3 quarterback every
Have
year.
we ever correlated like the quarterbacks ranking for Elite 11 to what their performance is in college?
I haven't, but I mean, C.J. Stroud was the Elite 11 MVP. Justin Fields was the Elite 11 MVP. Those are pretty good players, and
Right.
It turned out all right. I mean, Jordan Palmer and Trent Dilfer and the guys that have been a part of that for a long time. Dilfer's not anymore, obviously. That he's the head coach at UAB, but Jordan Palmer and Yogi Ross, the guys that do that, like they know what they're doing. It's not that is not a camp that is just a glitz and glamour camp.
Okay.
Yeah, they get good work in for sure. I think like the final board, whatever, does feel a little bit predetermined at times, but the 3-day process is pretty legit.
And again, it's Ohio State never under Ryan Day. Like there is no backup plan for quarterback. Like they get who they want.
Yeah, even when they miss, like the guy that they like pivot to usually ends up being pretty solid. Like I think the only time maybe that hasn't happened was the first time it happened when it took Matthew Baldwin, and we don't ever know because he got hurt and he never got to play.
Well, he took Matthew Baldwin because they were not sold at all on Emory Jones,
right.
And there was a transition in the program, and
that was a good pass.
Yeah, turned out fine.
Yeah, it worked out well for them.
I mean,
every time they've done it since then, it's worked out great.
And just last thing as we wrap up this live show from Roosters on Olentangy River Road is we're talking about quarterback and how Ohio State recruits it. Like last week on campus at Ohio State on Thursday, we saw Tavian St. Clair and Ryan Montgomery and a handful of young passers. Like there are kids from all over the country coming to make sure they camp at Ohio State so they can work with Ryan Day and Corey Dennis. So that is not an accident, and that's not happening because these guys lucked into quarterbacks. They know what they're doing. And when they pick their guy, like you can be sure that they are all in on that player. And it's not a situation where Ohio State is conceding, oh, we couldn't have got this other guy. Like Bryce Underwood, the number 1 ranked player in the country in the class of 2025, according to most folks, is a quarterback from 3 hours away in Belleville, Michigan. He's very, very high on Ohio State. But if Ohio State decides, like, we're going to move on and take someone else, knowing that guy would come here if we really push, like, it's because they're going to do that because they really believe in what they're doing.
I trust it, like, almost implicitly. There's not a whole lot I think I would say that about, but the track record is there for Ryan Day, and I think you include Corey Dennis in that, you include Todd Fitch in that. Like, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, it's brain trust.
Yeah, it's the Ryan Day's calling card.
Yeah, who would have thought? Ohio State just quarterback you.
It took a little while to get there. The development process was long, but they've landed on it. I mean, he does it right. Like I said, they do as good a job as evaluating quarterbacks as anyone I've seen.
It's funny, though, because obviously Ryan Day played quarterback in college, but he played at New Hampshire. It's not like he was a high-level quarterback.
Played at the Shire.
Do you think that you could be a linebacker coach and know, like, immediately that, hey, this guy's going to be that guy? Like, if you're out recruiting linebackers, do you think that you'd be able to see a guy on tape and be like, that's a guy I want, and then, like, how highly would you trust your evaluation?
I think I could do an all right job of it. I mean, there's a handful of guys that I've been consulted on and asked throughout over the years who I'd seen play locally here. And if you can get eyes on them in person, the positive things have turned out to be positive. If there was any shortcomings, some of those things were mitigated, but there was also, like, there was a real flaw. And I say flaw, just an issue with something that they had.
I think that quarterback and linebacker are interesting to me just because they're two positions where there's the physical side that you can always see on tape, but until you can actually have a conversation with somebody and understand their mental approach to the game, like those two spots are way different as far as the mental side of the game. Like we saw Eli Lee, a linebacker from Akron, Hoban, last week, and somebody said he walks like a linebacker. Like I think it was you. Like that dude walks like a linebacker. Like you guys all sort of have the same countenance and carry yourselves the same way. Like it's, and I don't know what it is, but it's like this attitude of I'm going to be willing to kill myself to win this game. And I don't think there's other positions who have that approach.
We might be true on that. I mean, some of it's vision too, like in being able to see and be explosive with things. So you can see certain stuff in drills, like quarterback. Watching the guy throw, that's great. I need to watch you throw, like, in a game against other human beings and, like, how well you process information, which a lot of that is very similar at linebacker as well. And then, like you mentioned, the mentality.
Fullback and linebackers, the only two positions who I think are willing to kill themselves.
There's a reckless abandonment.
Shankability.
Yeah. I think that's what it comes down to. Like, in the Madden rankings, the shankability, linebacker and fullback has them very high. You know what else I have very high on my list? $3 appetizer Tuesdays. Roosters
pedals. They're feathers. You said pedals and screwed me up. Roosters feathers. Plucking sauce. I call it the pluck you sauce. $3. It's a Threes Day. Appetizer Threes Day.
You know, I don't like onions, as we've discussed, but I bet those taste really good with the spicy ranch from Roosters.
Oh, it's good. It's good.
Love the space.
Lot of stuff to talk about. Ohio State in the middle of June. We're almost to Big Ten Media Day. We got a month left, and then it's football season again, and we'll have a lot more stuff to talk about as opposed to today's smorgasbord. That's Bobby Carpenter. I'm Jeremy Birmingham. That's Bill Landis. I almost got that backwards. Thank you, Zach Warren, for coming out here today. Sorry that he didn't get out to be on the show, but that's my fault in some ways. Other people's faults in others. We'll leave it at that. And we'll be back next week from Roosters on Olentangy River Road. Hopefully we will see you then. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.